restricted on measuring player performance, using it for the scouts, medical teams, and in general, the coaching staff. The commercial use of data has not been, however, so widespread. Most clubs, even in bigger leagues, are currently trying to find their way, trying to figure what and how they should be doing. They're searching for answers to the questions like, what's the benefit of working with data? How should they get started from a technical point of view? How should they create an organization around it? How it will help ticketing, merchandise, sponsorship, sales, and how they should balance their work so it's not becoming overwhelming, but still makes a sustainable difference. And here we are today discussing with two of the more advanced clubs, Valencia and Inter Miami, to share their own experience together with Datatox, who has been helping clubs in the past years to get started with data-driven fun experiences. We also have a venture capitalist who helps clubs with their own tech projects. We will have a Q&A session at the end, so make sure to ask questions. And without further ado, I would like just to introduce the people in the panel. So you have 1 minute just to do a short introduction about yourself and what you do. Starting with Franco, maybe.
Hi, everyone. My name is Franco. I'm the Digital Innovation Director. I work here for Valencia since 2 years ago. And basically, what we are building here in Valencia is a new data culture. It's a really old club. It's already over 100 years old, and we play on a really old stadium, which is around 97 years old. So it's quite a challenge to bring in the new technologies without disrupting too much what is considered one of the most traditional sports, as you can see in respect of the age. So basically, we are trying to combine these two technologies and passion, tradition, all into one.
Thank you, Franco. How about you, John?
Thank you for having me. My name is Jimenez. I'm a VP of Digital Content and Broadcast for Inter Miami. Unlike Franco, we are a new club. And there's benefits on being a new club because you have the opportunity to create something from scratch. We believe in being a data first club, and our approach has been to create and build platforms that ultimately allow us to get to know our fan base in a way that probably social media and other platforms won't allow us, and definitely look into that data and find benefits for our broadcasting partners, for our partners in terms of sponsorship, and really learn what our fan base really likes, and just go above and beyond just a psychographic profile of them and really deep into the behavior.
Sounds really exciting. Thank you and welcome. Peter, do you want to go next?
Yes, thank you. I'm the sports vertical lead at Datatox, and ever since I started working, I've been working with different football clubs across Europe. I've worked with different stadiums, mostly on fan engagement projects, on ticketing projects, on building their websites, mobile apps, and really, getting the engagement with the supporters up. And since 2 years, a bit more than that, I've been working at Datatox, and then bringing the data services and getting started with data management for the different football clubs and sport organizations across Europe.
Thank you, Peter. And Gayatri?
Hi from Boston. So I'm a partner at Hype Capital. We are the venture arm of Hype Sports Innovation. We are the world's largest sports accelerator program, and we just recently had a clubs and federation program where Valencia, Franco was also there. So a lot of startups, tech startups actually piloted with clubs and federations. My background is I come from actually data background, so pure database architect, platform, and worked a lot of data projects at Hewlett-Packard, IBM, Goldman Sachs, Federal Reserve Bank of Boston. I had been into the investment world for quite some time, have sold previously a sports fund. And I also sit on a couple of large asset management funds board, and data is something I'm very passionate about. I also have invested a couple of data-oriented startups that are using sports as one of their use cases.
Thank you very much. I hear two words so far from all of you, data and sports. So it will be an exciting session for sure. And let's dive in. Peter, first question for you. In your experience, how well do clubs really know their fans?
That's a good question, and I think there's two answers to this. One is, of course, the supporters for most clubs have been there for decades or even hundreds of years. So they come to the game, the engagement of social media on the websites is really high. There's tons of comments and reactions. So in that sense, yeah, clubs have a good overview. But when it comes to actually knowing the fans one by one, knowing what they do, how they behave, what they buy, what they prefer, well, there's, in my experience, with all the meetings with the different clubs in the past years, there's quite some room to actually cover.
Gayatri, would you feel the same as Peter?
I think there are a lot of opportunities, but we need to make sure we are not leaving money on the table. I think these clubs, I always talk, these clubs and federations, they always have this loyal fan bases. And I always talk about promise market fit. In venture capital or in the investment side, we are always focused on investing in amazing technology startups. But the moment you associate sports clubs, sports players, federations, you are immediately engaging a trust factor into your product architecture. So I definitely think there are more opportunities that can be built along the fan engagements, ticketing, merchandise, but also understanding that how to maximize the revenue and enhance the fan experience through data analytics.
Great, thank you. So going now on the other side, on the football clubs itself, Zan, the next question is for you. When and why did Inter Miami first start working with data? What did you want to achieve in the first place?
Yeah, I think we were really privileged to have an ownership group that believed in technology from the get-go. And, you know, having an ownership group like Marcelo Claure, Jorge Mas, and David Beckham, they really understood the value of data and the value of the fan in reality. And everything that we do is, in essence, to cater to the fans. This is a fan-centered club. There was no way that if we were going to be a fan-centered club, we were not going to be a data-centered club. So since the beginning, you know, we were able to acquire this, you know, idea and this notion that every single decision needed to be data-driven, right? And in order to do that, you need to be, in a way, the one bucket or the whole, you know, holy grail of information coming in, right? So, like when you think about you know, social media, how well do clubs know their fan base just with social media? The only thing that we knew at one point was that there was a fan with an affinity to the club, and that was it. We were at the mercy of the social media networks on giving us whatever information they were able to capture and they wanted to share with us. And we decided that we wanted to be the owners, instead of leasing that information, just be the owners of the data and really understand who Jose Perez or who Michael Smith was, and not leave it to someone else.
Sounds pretty reasonable to me. Was it the same for you, Franco, or what's the story for Valencia?
Well, the story, it's similar in a way, in the sense that the ownership here also has a great view in terms of data-driven decisions. But the thing here is that we need to change, and there's a huge shift in terms of what Valencia CF was. Of course, let's remember it's a 100-year-old sports club. So making this change and at the same time not getting into many other problems. There was a big, I'd say that the digital transformation we carried on a couple of years ago. That's when it started. I'd say it's more about the transformation we did internally in the club, the culture, the mindset of the people, rather than the data itself. So we started doing and looking at every single vertical of the business here, at ticketing, of course, social media, of course, media, of course, e-commerce, and we started to regain the ownership of the data. As Jen said, it's important and it's kind of crazy, but in the past, football clubs were more worried of playing football, of course, rather than getting the data. So at first we had to regain the ownership of all our data. And then we started looking at the data and seeing what that data guide us and what decisions it proved to us, what patterns we realized we had there.
Okay, then what I hear from both of you basically is ownership of data. That was like one of the main drivers there. Is that correct?
Yeah.
In our case, I'd say it was one of the drivers.
Yeah, I mean, for us, it was really about optimizing the information that we had on our fans, and ultimately it was really about generating fan engagement, but also building commercial opportunities for our sponsors. At the end of the day, we were definitely really focused on generating fan engagement and the relationship with our fans, but also looking for avenues to generate new commercial franchises.
Makes sense, makes sense.
But also, the clubs that I've been talking with and the clubs that we are working with, I experience very often that some parts of the business, for example, merchandise, or for example, ticketing has been outsourced. So there is sometimes a third party involved either by providing the platform for selling merchandise or selling tickets. And previously, a couple of years back, well, no one really thought about the data or how this will benefit the club in the long run or in the big picture. So now when they try to create an overall data strategy, then it is an issue to overcome that. Okay, so we need to get back the data ownership from this third-party provider, not just the revenues that the business unit in itself generates.
You brought up a very good point, Peter, because in the past, some of these verticals of the business were associated to third-party vendors, as you mentioned. And normally they would hold the data hostage within their platform. There was no sharing of information. So essentially you knew that there was revenue coming, but you did not have the capability of taking that data and transforming into new net sales or new opportunities to engage your fans.
Exactly, or create the overall supporter journey. So what is the customer journey look like for the club, not just for ticketing?
See, also another thing I want to add is that it's not just the ownership of the data, but it's like what you do with the data. But the most important thing, what's the end goal? It's the better customer experience. How do you enhance their experience the moment? Not only the game day experience, but before that, the predictive algorithm analysis. When you are targeting certain customers, their consumers, how they are interacting with your clubs, what they're thinking. I think there is an immense opportunity that needs to be opened up, and there is an opportunity from the revenue standpoint and opportunity from the experience standpoint. And I think if we merge the two, I think there is definitely a side of a vertical that we can open up from the clubs and federation side. So I think there's like, as I said, world is your oyster.
Definitely.
Okay, so now we heard the why, but I am a bit more interested into the how. So a question maybe from Gayatri. How do you work with fan data management from a technical and organizational standpoint?
Yeah, so from our standpoint, we work with the startups. We invest in startups, and we also work with the startups from our accelerator programs. So the biggest example I can give is that we ran, right now everything is virtual. So we had a big virtual sports accelerator program in which we had esports and various other verticals, but we had clubs and federations. We had like St. Paris, Miami Dolphin, Valencia, then FIBA, Tennis Australia, a lot of other guys. They all came together and we asked the question, what are the problems that you guys are facing? How can we fix that? And our job is a facilitator. We are not the ones to fix the problem. So our job is to find startups, look at the deals where we can invest or we can help them to come and pilot with any of the clubs and federations. Because one of the important things that we need to realize that whenever these clubs and federations are working with legacy platforms, they can, we're talking about data hostage and other things, but also there's an opportunity when you work with the startups, the monetization part, the opportunity of working with someone with the lowest friction, it's great. So this is the thing that the club and the federations are realizing right now. And I think we want to enhance that opportunity, not only for the tech startups where they're agile and they can move fast and you can do certain things at a very small amount of money, but at the same time, you can enable newer opportunities from the clubs and federation side. So I'll give one example. Like last year, we invested in a company called Tokabot. It's an AI predictive algorithm startup, and they're working with publishers like Build and Axel Springer. So we were the lead investor, and we invested with Axel Springer. And what they do is that they work with clubs and federations, and to realize that how the fans are working with each other and what fans are talking even before the game. And they predict that how many fans will be entering the game day, arena, how many fans will be watching from their homes, what are the different experiences, how they are interacting or thinking about different sports players. And I think understanding that it's very important. It's all about building community. It's all about the experience. And that is what many of the startups and technology areas are working with. I want to give one example, like think about Facebook, Twitter. These are all social media platforms, but they are mining data every day. They did not have a loyal fan base, but now every day you get up also, you feel like, oh, can I log into Facebook and check? But think about sports from the consumer standpoint. It's the biggest consumer industry in the world. You don't have to be an American, European, or Indian, or any parts of the world to enjoy a particular kind of sports. So I think from that perspective, we have an immense opportunity for people to come together and they understand one language, the language of joy of sports. And how can we turn that as an opportunity from both sides? And I this is my personal thinking, and I think a lot of investors also think the same way, that this is a new asset class. And, we need to take sports and technology come together with clubs and federation as a new asset class that we can build, and don't leave money on the table. I always say that. So I definitely think from our perspective, we are just facilitators. We want to write the check, but also we want to help the startups and technology companies work with clubs and federations to enhance the experience.
Thank you. That was really interesting and inspiring, I would say. Franco, same question basically for Valencia. How do you work with fan data management from a technical perspective?
So from a technical perspective, I think it's important to be clear that in terms of data, it's interesting not to get only the data from one data source, but it's important to have this 360-degree view. Otherwise, you might be missing the most interesting side. We've seen information that, for example, if you get just the ticketing information from a fan, you can see some patterns. But then somehow you look at other information, let's say about food and beverage, and then when you put this as a whole, is when you see the picture even bigger, and you're able of seeing more relationship between the different data sources. That's why initially we spoke about the importance of owning your own data. Otherwise, you will only be seeing one of the pictures. So what we try and do is to gather the data from the fans and trying to correlate that data amongst all the data sources, all the data points that we have in the customer journey, because that's the way that we are able of tracking what the customer is doing and what type of customer, what type of fan it is. So basically, I'd say that the most important, the most difficult part is everything that's related, because you probably guessed that every different data source might have its own ID. I'm getting too technical, but I'm trying to everyone to analyze that this is quite a difficult task, and it could be very, very difficult to solve in terms of things like identity resolution, data cleaning, data quality, data completion, and so on. So once you solve those problems, which are not easy to solve, you can get a full picture of the 360-degree view. And that's where we invest the most time, to understand our fans. And by that, we need to have the opportunity to gather all the information just into one place.
Dionysios, if I may, for in Miami, it was a bit of a mix of both what Gayatri was saying and what Franco was saying. To us, it was definitely about finding the right partners. It was about understanding that you need to work with like-minded professionals, with people that want to be first in market, that want to be disruptive, people that are ahead of the curve when it comes to technology and fan engagement. But it was also something about centralizing every single data point. So when we looked at, so how do we do it? You think about, well, let's break down the fan experience and the fan journey and see, well, we have someone in social. How do we bring him in into getting his email. Then you have his email. Then, okay, how do we bring him in into getting his SMS, his telephone number? Then what if this person comes into our venue? How do we sign up and find a way to connect to the Wi-Fi information and create a touch point that is almost a single sign-on? Then whenever this person comes in, whether it is via our website, via our app, via our stadium Wi-Fi, you are going to be able to identify him. Then it's bringing the tickets information and bringing whatever provider you use at the moment and connecting to those APIs. Then looking at the merchandise and having access to that merchandise API as well, and connecting that. And as Franco was saying, generating a single fan entity that you're able to revisit and segment in a way that will yield value both for the fan experience and creating moments, but also for your sponsors and partners.
And I think both you, Franco and Sean, mentioned a lot about the transactional data of the supporters. So if I may speak a tacky language, the different kind of events like a registration, a purchase, a login to the stadium Wi-Fi. Of course, probably the data projects, those are the first and lowest hanging fruits to bring in. But I think it's also very important to combine this data with the behavioral side. So how do these supporters actually feel? What do they think? What are their preferences? What demographics are they? What more can we find out about them that they don't tell us? And if we can enrich those profiles that we managed to create, well, I'm not saying we are going to double the 360 view, but we are going to have an even fuller 360 view.
Yeah, but you know what? Gayatri mentioned something really relevant earlier. It's like, what do you do with data on its own? It's raw. You don't do anything. You need to find a way to interpret that data and to identify value. That value could come as, the return on investment could be fan engagement. It could be creating content that is tailored to a specific experience, or it could translate into, dollars if you're able to convert that into actionable data for a sponsor. But building that 360 without data interpretation is useless.
Absolutely, I completely agree. And with all the clubs that we work with, it's always first, so what do you want to achieve? Do you want to have more engaged fans? Do you want to sell more tickets? Do you want to sell more merchandise? Whatever it is, it's fine. But what is the use case? Because if we don't have the right use case, well, then we just collect data for the sake of collecting data. And then if we have a pile of data, but we don't use it for anything, then it's useless.
Okay. Yes, please go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Okay, then we heard the how now, and I would like just to hear firsthand what would be like your biggest failure and your biggest success so far for Valencia. Let's start with that.
Well, I'd say that the biggest failure is to try and win games and play Moneyball, and everyone is thinking that probably because we do data, everything is related to the sport itself. So I don't think we're there yet. So basically what we are trying to do is take decision in the business side of the company, basically. So in terms of success, it's not big things that we have done, which we have been working with algorithms, AI, and machine learning. But for example, one of our biggest success was when we played the Copa del Rey final 1 year ago in our centenary year. For example, we had around 20,000 tickets and we had 40,000 season ticket holders which wanted to attend the game. So instead of doing a random raffle, so to see who should get the ticket, we looked at some parameters in terms of data and see, let's give these tickets to the people that have attended the most games and to the people that have have been the most loyal to us. A combination of both factors. For example, we look at the numbers to see which numbers gave around 20,000 tickets. And it's basically, if I remember, it was at least 5 years season ticket holders and at least 80% of the games attended during the regular season. So basically, we instructed and educated the people based on data that this was going to be the rule from now on. If we played more finals, we were always going to look at the data. And this made a huge increase in terms of attendance. So we went from 80% season ticket holder attendance to 87% the year after. So as you see, it's not something huge and very difficult. Again, we're doing some really deep learning and machine learning algorithms to prevent and predict attendance. But this, in fact, which was quite easy, was probably one of our biggest success.
That's great to hear. How about you, Zan?
I think for us, the biggest failure was definitely COVID. It's not necessarily a technology issue, but rather the fact that we had to restart our season 3 times on our first attempt to launch a club, and that was something that was really hard as an institution. I think we turned that into definitely a success. We were able to pivot really quickly our strategy from a physical experience that is, let's say, the normal to a very digital fan journey, utilizing, again, like I said, our partners. We went with PumpJack DataWorks to build an application, a mobile application that became the centralized hub for our fandom. And then, in terms of success, I think we also looked at vendors as the catalyst of success, and helping us shape our effective, or what we call it, the Friday wins. Right. We also partnered with another vendor called MangoSoft, and we built alongside with PumpJack an OTT service that is one of a kind in MLS, because we're the first club to be able to stream our games. And we built a really interesting experience where we're able to deliver the game in the local, regional market, as it's shown with our broadcasting partners. And outside of that radius, we're actually delivering an alternative feed of content that is really relevant to fans that don't have access, to watching the game in their local market. So we're able to kind of like decouple the experiences and service both fans in the local market and in the other market as well.
Really exciting. Okay, Peter, next question for you. Where is the line between helpful benefits and creepy positions when it comes to segmentation? So we all hear about segmentation and personalization, but sometimes maybe it's too much, or is it?
Yeah, I mean, it comes back to the relationship between the club and the fans. The fans are very loyal, the engagement is really high. So the question is, what do we want to achieve? We want to create the great supporter experience, and we want to achieve it by personalizing the messages, personalizing the campaigns. And how can we do it? Of course, by using data. But, well, to personalize the experience, we need to know a lot about it. And then let's take the example of a season ticket campaign. Now, many times clubs send out the same newsletters to the full audience. Okay, that's one way, but that probably is not the most effective one. Sometimes they differentiate. Okay, season ticket holders who had it last year and then new season ticket holders. Okay, that's a bit better. Or we go a bit deeper until we actually reach a point that we have a full profile. We have this 360 view of the supporter. Peter, you have been on 7 games last season. You have seen and celebrated 16 goals, and you have drank 2 liters of some drinks in the food and beverage stalls, and then you brought 14 different friends with you to the games. Now, as a gratitude from the club, we really appreciate your support, and we would like to invite you to be a season ticket holder next year as well. Here's a deal for you. Now, if you get the newsletter like that, or whatever message format you use, but if you get the message type with that, with a combination of these different data sources, then I will be blown away. And I think most supporters will be. It's both exciting, it's new, it's something that supporters haven't seen before, and well, it's not used against them, so the benefit will be pretty clear.
Yeah,
definitely agree on that.
Yeah, I think Dionysios, if I may, when you think about building a relationship, it starts with having information, right? Before we joined this panel, we were all talking in the green room, understanding each other, and that's how we are able to have some sort of connectivity between us in this conversation. If you don't know anything about your fan, you're not going to be able to be really targeted in having a conversation. And I think it needs to be a sweet spot between being creepy and having information about him that he'll be afraid of, and being, candid and friendly in a way that you're able to communicate something that is relevant to him and it makes sense to him because you were able to connect with some of his feelings and emotions and behaviors without being intrusive.
Definitely, definitely, we agree on that. So last question, where do you start, Gayatri? Where do you start from all that? What would you recommend to a club when starting creating a better supporter experience?
Yeah, I mean, before I talk about recommending something to the clubs, I want to say something. But last year, I was quoted at TechCrunch that sports is one of the non-cyclical industry compared to other verticals, and but COVID-19 has put us in a place where for the first time, we're seeing an unprecedented experience. We cannot play sports. We have played sports in World War I, World War II. Now we cannot even play sports in our backyard with our friends. So it's a very difficult time for all of us. And we are seeing in this difficult time, certain companies, certain sections, they are actually enabling the opportunities, whether you're at home or you are having a virtual experience. So I'm talking about esports and various other sectors. Sports has remained traditional for a very long period of time. And when I talk about sports remaining traditional, I'll talk about clubs and federations. And I feel they understand the opportunity and they are working very hard to figure this out. But I think there are more opportunities that can be tapped. And many of you people may know that augmented reality is something where the technology has not gone further, has not taken place. But if we have high amount of opportunities mix up with the experience, with the emotional connection, the psychometry analysis that all this social media platform they do. I wanted to enhance on the fact is that what everybody has said, it's all about the experience, but also how to make that technology move that experience further. We already have the loyal fan database. And when it comes to the clubs and federations, I feel international football it's obviously certainly a major driver of overall sports, sports interest, and particularly in expatriate dominated countries. So when interest in international leagues and others, they find themselves more attracted towards, Inter Miami or Valencia or other football bigger clubs compared to the local leagues. And I think this is the
Thank you, Gayatri.
opportunity.
Unfortunately, I have to stop you there. We have a lot of questions that we cannot really answer for our panelists, but we'll sure get back to you. I would like to thank all of you for your really valuable input. And if you want to hear more about how to create a world-class customer experience, I would suggest you to talk with Peter from Data Talks regarding on how to build personalized fan engagement campaigns by collecting, analyzing, and acting on your supporter data. Thanks and have a great rest of the day.